Christmas had always been my favorite holiday. Every year, I flew home carrying expensive gifts, homemade cookies, and the hope that maybe, just maybe, this would finally be the year my parents treated me like I truly belonged. Instead, I always left with the same feeling. Second place. My younger sister, Emma, was the golden child. She could quit jobs, waste money, and still hear Mom proudly say, "She's just finding herself." When I graduated college with honors, my parents barely attended because Emma had a dance competition. When I bought my first car, Dad asked if I could lend Emma money for hers. And when I worked 12 years, taking overtime, skipping vacations, and saving every bonus, to buy my dream condo worth nearly $350,000, they simply said, "That's nice. No congratulations. No celebration. Just, that's nice." I learned long ago not to expect much. So when my mother insisted this Christmas would be special, I actually believed her. Big mistake. Christmas morning looked perfect. The fireplace crackled. Snow covered the backyard. The dining table overflowed with roasted turkey, pies, and hot chocolate. Relatives laughed while opening presents. Then Mom stood up and tapped her wine glass. "We have one final gift," she announced with a huge smile. Everyone turned toward her. Dad pulled out a large envelope tied with a bright red ribbon. "For Emma," he said proudly. The room erupted in applause before anyone even knew what it was. Emma squealed as she opened the envelope. Inside was a neatly printed property deed. She froze, then screamed, "Oh my God! A condo!" Mom hugged her tightly. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart." I frowned. "A condo?" Dad smiled proudly. "Not just any condo." He looked directly at me. "Your condo." The room went completely silent. I laughed because surely, it had to be a joke. "What?" Mom folded her arms. "You've always been independent. Emma needs stability more than you do. Besides, family shares everything." My stomach dropped. "You can't give away my property." Dad casually sipped his coffee. "We already handled the paperwork." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What paperwork?" Dad smiled. "The power of attorney forms you signed months ago." Then I remembered. Last spring, Dad had claimed the bank needed a signature because he was helping organize some family tax documents. I trusted him. I signed without reading every page. Now every relative stared at me. Some looked uncomfortable. Others avoided eye contact completely. Emma was already talking about repainting my living room and turning my office into a walk-in closet. Like I wasn't even there. Mom looked at me and smiled. "Be happy for your sister." I slowly stood. Without another word, I walked out into the freezing snow. Everyone thought I was leaving because my heart was broken. They had no idea I was heading straight to my lawyer. And before New Year's Day, someone else would legally own that condo. The morning after Christmas, I sat across from my attorney, David, clutching a folder of documents with shaking hands. "I need you to tell me one thing," I said. "Did my parents really take my condo?" He carefully examined every page I brought. 20 minutes later, he looked up. "The paperwork isn't as airtight as they think." My heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "The power of attorney they had you sign gave your father limited authority for financial matters." It did not clearly authorize him to gift away your property for no payment. So the transfer can be challenged. Relief washed over me, but David raised a finger. However, court could take months. Months. Emma was already planning to move into my home next week. There has to be another option. David smiled. There is. He pointed to one line in the property records. The transfer hasn't been fully registered yet. Legally, you're still listed as the owner until the final filing is completed. I stared at him. You're saying I still have time? A very small window. That afternoon, we contacted a reputable real estate investor who had been looking for condos in my neighborhood. He toured the property the same day. I'll pay market value, he said. But I can close before New Year's if the title checks out. David nodded. It checks out. 48 hours later, the sale was complete. The money landed safely in my bank account. I watched the balance appear on my phone and let out the first deep breath I'd taken since Christmas morning. My condo was gone, but it had been my decision, not theirs. 3 days later, my phone exploded with missed calls. Mom, Dad, Emma, over 30 voicemails. Finally, I answered. Dad shouted before I could speak. What have you done? I sold my condo. You had no right. I almost laughed. No right. It was my property. Emma grabbed the phone. You ruined everything. I already picked out furniture. I replied calmly, then I hope the furniture store has a good return policy. There was complete silence. Then Mom whispered the words she'd never expected to say. Please, tell us you're joking. I've never been more serious. A long pause followed. Then Dad said something that made me realize this wasn't over. You have no idea who you just sold it to. Before I could ask what he meant, he hung up. Dad's final words echoed in my mind all night. You have no idea who you just sold it to. The next morning, I called my attorney. Did you find anything unusual about the buyer? David chuckled. Only that he's very private. Private how? He buys distressed and high-value properties through an investment company. Everything is perfectly legal. That should have reassured me. Instead, my parents' panic made me suspicious. By noon, my phone rang again. This time, it was my aunt. Honey, your parents are furious. I noticed. They've been calling every relative, saying you stole your sister's Christmas gift. I couldn't believe it. My condo was never her gift to begin with. I know, my aunt sighed. Most of us know. That evening, my parents showed up at my apartment unannounced. Dad pounded on the door. When I opened it, Emma stormed inside without waiting for an invitation. Fix this, she demanded. There's nothing to fix. Mom crossed her arms. You call the buyer. Tell him the sale was a mistake. I won't. Dad's face turned red. Do you know who he is? I calmly replied, no. And it doesn't matter. It matters because. Dad hesitated. Because I already promised him something. I frowned. What does that mean? He looked away. I borrowed a large amount of money from him months ago. The room fell silent. What? Dad rubbed his forehead. I used your condo as proof that our family owned valuable property. I told him Emma would receive it, refinance it, and I'd repay the loan. My jaw dropped. You used my home to secure your debt. He nodded without meeting my eyes. You never even asked me. I thought everything would work out. Emma's confident expression disappeared. You told me the condo was completely paid for and legally mine. Dad whispered. I thought it would be. Mom looked at me with tears in her eyes. You have to help us. For years, I said quietly, you expected me to solve every problem you created. I picked up my keys and walked to the door. Not anymore. As they left, Dad turned around one last time. If we lose this money, we'll lose the family house. I watched them drive away. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. Because their choices had finally caught up with them. But 2 days later, someone knocked on my door. When I opened it, a sharply dressed man handed me a business card. I'm the man who bought your condo, he said. And I'd like to tell you what your father has been hiding from everyone. I invited the man inside. He introduced himself as Michael Carter. I didn't come here to cause trouble, he said. I came because you deserve the truth. He slid a thick folder across my coffee table. Inside were loan agreements, emails, and signed documents. My stomach tightened as I read them. For nearly 3 years, my father had been drowning in debt. Instead of telling anyone, he'd borrowed money from private investors, convinced relatives to, temporarily, help with expenses, and even claimed that my condo would soon become a family asset he could use to repay everything. He made promises he couldn't legally make, Michael explained. When I discovered you were the true owner, I refused to release the remaining loan funds. I looked up. So selling the condo ended the scheme, Michael finished. A week later, my parents asked to meet me one last time. They looked exhausted. Dad's shoulders were slumped. Mom couldn't stop crying. We're sorry, Dad whispered. We blamed you for everything because we were ashamed of our own mistakes. Emma sat silently beside them. For the first time in her life, she didn't defend our parents. Instead, she looked at me and said, I should have questioned why they thought they could give me something that wasn't theirs. I'm sorry. The room was quiet. I accepted their apologies, but I didn't pretend everything was suddenly fixed. Trust isn't rebuilt with a single conversation. It's rebuilt with years of honesty. I used the money from the condo sale to buy a smaller home in another city, started my own consulting business, and finally built the life I'd always wanted, one where my peace didn't depend on anyone else's approval. The following Christmas, my phone buzzed with a family group message. Will you be coming home this year? I smiled, then typed my reply. I've already found my home. I set the phone down, poured myself a cup of hot chocolate, and watched the snow fall outside my window. For the first time in years, Christmas felt peaceful. Sometimes the greatest gift isn't a house, an inheritance, or money. Sometimes it's finding the courage to walk away from the people who never valued you, and choosing a future where you value yourself.